Our men's mental health podcast continue right here at Disrupt Media in the next round with Dr. Bhrett McCabe, years and years of experience, actually suffers from mental illness at times himself. Nick Johnston RV, our very own producer, Sean Henniger, Rockstar back there. I'm Lance Taylor. We're going to focus on anxiety. And as a kid, I thought anxiety meant you were anxious in a good way, like you wanted to get to a movie or you wanted to get to a birthday party. And then the older I get, I start to experience the crippling effects of anxiety. It's hard to explain if you've never really had it.
That's a pretty fair assessment, yeah.
And for people out there that maybe haven't been diagnosed with it, how can you explain some of the symptoms where maybe it triggers and they can actually get out in front of this and reach out to local doctor and start the conversation?
Kind of an easy way of looking at it is if you've ever had like too much coffee or too many energy drinks or too much sugar and you just got this burn inside of you that it's like we're trying to cram way too much in the smallest space. It feels like it's exploding. So it's taken over. Anxiety is the ultimate mind-body experience. The mind is racing, evaluating and scanning the world for threat, internally and externally. Your body, your heart rate is moving, your adrenaline is pumping. It's exhausting. And the best way to look at it for somebody who's never had it is to think about turning the car stereo up so loud in your car and you just can't quiet it down. I don't know if that's how you feel when you've been driving.
It's very similar. Yeah, me, it was just more scared. And before I got the help, driving, I guess, was what you'd consider my trigger. Not just me.
It's funny how it expands out, right?
Yeah, no, it would, and it's one of the reasons I had so much trouble last week is because my wife, little girl, middle son who just graduated high school, they're on the way to Panama City for senior trip. My oldest son and youngest son, they're headed over to Gadsden. I had them all on the road, okay? And, there for a while, again, there would be times where I just have to pull over, because I would get these just awful images of what could happen, right? And it would just be crippling. I mean, it was tough, and it scared me last week when it happened again.
Share when you said crippling.
Okay.
Take me through what that is. We're not doing therapy here, but it's important because I can tell you mine. I'm sure Lance can tell you his, and Rockstar can tell you theirs. I mean, listen, we're not bringing all this up for wanting everyone to give us, an olive branch and say, "Oh, poor guys."
Oh no, wow.
No. I want you all to understand. We're bringing this up because there are some of you out there that are suffering. That going, "What in the hell is wrong with me?" Like, am I? And men, by the way, go into the primary care physician to say something's wrong with my heart, something's wrong with whatever, and then finally the doc goes, "Are you stressed?" And they're like, "Oh God, it ain't stress. I mean, come on, it's."
No, I'm a man.
I'm a man. It's not that. I'm whatever. Yeah, it's.
I'm too manly. My heart's trying to give out.
Exactly. And then the next question is, how's your sex life?
I don't want to talk about that.
Yeah, I don't want to talk about that. Yeah, I don't want to talk about that. Exactly. And they're like, "Oh no. I mean, there's no intimacy." So when you have that feeling, what is that? What does that anxiety storm feel like?
It's again, I don't feel like I can move. Okay. It's these horrible, and I mean, like
no.
Tough to talk
non-judgmentally,
about.
just saying.
No, I'm just saying. I know it's tough to talk about, and for somebody out there watching this, they may be going through the same thing. But when it happens to me, I get these images in my head of things that could happen to my family, right? And things,
they're intrusive. They'll take over everything.
No, intrusive.
I hear
right?
the car crash.
So, no, I'll watch. Literally, if there's not a divider on the interstate, I'm watching the oncoming lane more than anything. So I'm scared to death.
Ready to swerve right?
Now, again, that until I started getting help, that was an everyday thing. Oof. And it gets to the point to where, like we talked about it earlier, you don't want to go anywhere.
Of course not.
You don't want your children who just got their driver's license, to drive anywhere but the 3 miles to school and back. You just so worried. Yeah, there's going to be a, obvious worry, raising kids, but this was on another level. So when I say crippling, I mean, there were times where I would manage to get myself pulled off the side of the interstate and just call my wife, and I would have the steering wheel like this.
Cold sweat?
Yes. Just
I mean,
scared.
your back
Scared.
is soaking wet.
Scared.
Okay.
Yes.
What about breathing, heart rate?
Well, Breathing wise, yeah. I mean, it would be. I was actually driving back from dropping my son off at a soccer camp, and it started hitting me. This was last summer, and I'm doing my breathing exercises that have helped. That was one of the big things that helped me when this started happening. We kind of figured out I could do this. I could try to get it under control a little bit, right? Well, I'm on the interstate on my way back, and I called Autumn, and I'm telling myself, "You're fine, you're fine, you're fine, you're fine." And as soon as she said hello, I was a mess. I started crying. Tough to breathe. It just
lasted how long?
Well, I talked to her from just outside of Tuscaloosa to north of Birmingham.
45 minutes?
Yeah, probably. No, I mean on the opposite side of Tuscaloosa.
Oh, okay.
So no, it was a while. And I finally, managed to get calmed down. I didn't have to pull off the side of the road at that particular time. But yeah, that's when it happens to me. That's what happens.
For me, when I had that episode in January in Indianapolis, started to talk to someone, but didn't really want to start the meds. I heard about the side effects. You're going to gain a little weight. It's going to affect your sex life. There's a lot of side effects. So I really didn't dabble in that. And then it was my 50th birthday. I'm in 30A. I've got everybody I love with me. And I'm on the beach behind my sunglasses and tears are coming down. And I didn't know what the hell was going on. And we went to lunch, and I had to get up in the middle of the lunch. We had just ordered. And I go outside and I call my ex-wife again. And I start bawling, crying. And I'm like, I am losing my mind. I am going crazy. What is wrong with me? Then we get my psychiatrist on the phone. He's like, you're not going crazy. He kind of talks me down a little bit. We end up leaving. They had to pack the meals up, all that kind of stuff. But that's when I got home, I got on a med. I can't explain it either, man. It just hit me like a ton of bricks, but I thought I was losing my mind.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing. So when you got to understand, so when we're talking about one element of anxiety here is panic attacks. It's a sudden surge of our fight or flight response, our adrenaline response in our body. Okay. Well, when we see something of enjoyment, so I'm sure when Rockstar's playing, there's a sense of adrenaline on stage, right?
Of course, yeah.
And you love that.
Yes, it's the good adrenaline.
Ah, there it is. It's labeled as good.
adrenaline.
And so now you embrace it and you're like, damn straight, I need it. But when it's coming out of the blue and it's connected to that irrational thought process, which, like I said, there's some truth to those. There is a chance a semi could come across that lane. Hell, we're seeing all the TV ads. We're in a constant bombardment of news. They're telling us everything is wrong. I mean, look, how many kids want to go to movie theaters right now?
Every time I'm in one, I think there's going to be a shooter. I look for the exits.
100%.
Do you, Rocky?
I do, and so that's why I'm going to go to the one that's had 6 people in it.
One incident that we know of. One.
All it takes.
All it takes.
You know what it says? It's possible.
It's possible. And so what happens is, if it was 100%, then you would not be fearful. If you knew that there was a threat, it would not be fear. It would be, it'd be something we had to respond to in the moment. So that adrenaline system is trying to prepare you and get you ready. And the fact is, the reason is it's trying to scan the environment. So you're more aware of every truck coming. You're more aware of all the things that feel wrong in what you're doing. And the body just keeps sending adrenaline to it. And it usually lasts 15 to 30 minutes. And afterwards, you feel exhausted, you feel wiped out, you feel miserable. Well, there's another type of anxiety, what we call generalized anxiety, which is never peaks to that level, but it's more of a low level, just hum in your life. Worries, thoughts that are irrational, that you can't resolve. And worry is the way the brain resolves something it can't finish. Like if we knew there was a threat, we would respond. But just because there's a chance it's not, our minds keep sending noise out there to try to test it. Well, is that true? Is that true? Yeah, I think that's true. Okay, no, maybe that's not. Oh my God. And then we start judging it, which makes it even worse. There's the cycle, right? And so when you look at like anxiety, and this is a question for anybody who's in a work environment. And so we're talking about anxiety, but let's go even deeper. We all probably have AEDs somewhere. And if somebody drops down from a heart attack, we know how to call 911. How many people in your office right now know what to do if somebody came in and pulled in the office and said, I'm in an absolute horrendous place in my life and I'm considering ending my life?
The only way I would know is just what I've experienced over the last couple of years.
That's it.
Yeah.
But you go back 2.5, 3 years
But
ago.
if you're not here,
I would have been completely lost.
Correct. And so one of the things, like in our last episode, we had Sam Wyman, that's a journalist from covers the PGA Tour. And one of the things that I've banged on the PGA Tour is there's not dedicated spaces on the PGA Tour for me to meet with clients. So if somebody came to me and said, I need help, I have to think, okay, do you want to go sit in the bleachers behind the 9th green? I'm sure I could say, hey, but they would say, well, why do you need an office? Because this gentleman right here is in a really bad spot. Oh, yeah, okay.
Where's your credential?
Yeah, where's your credential? And I'm like, that's, okay. But, and so this is the bias that we have. And I'm fortunate at the University of Alabama, and we'll get Ginger on one day to talk about it. Ginger Gilmore is the head of the behavioral medicine. She's a doctorate in behavioral health. And she's brilliant. I mean, it is standard of conversation over there. So if somebody's having a panic attack, it's not like, oh, Lord, here we go. What are we going to do? It's like, get this started. This is how we're going to support it. Here's the person they talk to. That's the gold standard. But for all of us, it's like if somebody came into the office one day and was like, you look in their office and they're shaking and they're not moving and it'd be like, breathe. I mean, what do we do?
But yeah, there's also that when you're talking to a professional, so like in a moment, if I'm having a panic attack at a golf tournament, there's inside of me when I'm done talking to you and excessively apologizing, I'm sorry I just wasted your time.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. You've probably seen so much worse than me. I'm sorry that I just wasted 10 minutes of your time.
And the best way, and I'm sure there's other professionals out there who are listening to this going, well, I don't know if I do that. The best way to help somebody who's having a panic attack is just support them through it.
Yeah.
There's no solution. Like the last thing I need to do is like, okay, lay down and let's do 14 episodes. Like sometimes the best thing to do is, hey, we got this. And so what I do therapeutically is I get people to kind of report what they're feeling. And I'll never forget, I went out and saw a player on the PGA Tour. I went to Scottsdale one time, and this player had to withdraw. And he won a golf tournament by going to the ER twice for panic attacks in the middle overnights.
Man.
Okay.
The things we never hear about.
Yeah. Now this one got reported a little bit, but I came in to see him, and he was talking to him, and he was so anxious. And I literally, as I sat there with him, and I just put my hand on his shoulder while we talked. And I asked him first, don't worry, people at home. I said, can it mind if I touch you? And he's like, sure. And I said, now I want you to feel the difference of how you feel. And I said this a couple minutes later, it's just me having somebody touch you. And it slows his heart rate down. I believe like support animals, I mean, don't fly with one unless you legit need one. Okay. But good support animals do that. Heavy blankets are brilliant. We do have our superstitions that help us.
It's interesting you bring this up because even before my episode in Indianapolis, I was flying from Minneapolis to Chicago. It's only an hour flight. And it was back in 2018, October of 18. And for whatever reason, I had a massive panic attack. And all I wanted to do, and it was only a guy next to me, I wanted to grab his hand and hold it. I didn't know who he was. And I was about to do it. I know he would have flipped his shit probably. And I ended up not doing it. And I just battled through and I made it. And then I had to make the decision, am I going to drive from Chicago to Birmingham?
I've driven many times from Atlanta to Birmingham because of thunderstorms.
Yeah, but I think there is something with the physical touch.
Oh, big time.
Yeah.
Big time. And it's just, we're energy. And if you think about anxiety ultimately as a heightened point of energy, we are energy. Like that's why when it surges, it goes and then it dumps. And people get sick to their stomach. They get the soft sweating.
I'm just wiped out.
You're wiped out. Yeah, you're done. You might as well just go ahead and cut the day out.
Yep.
But how much do you fear it? See, if you had something that said, when it happens, this is what I'm going to do, now you start gaining control of the uncontrollable.
Well, can you give us some of those exercises? Okay,
Yeah.
Dr. Bhrett McCabe. This is Nick Johnston, Rockstar, of course, back there. I'm Lance Taylor. It's the Men's Mental Health Podcast. We're doing episode 2, Anxiety. Yeah, give us some exercises because I remember there was something, my guy was like, put some ice in your hand.
Good one.
Where different. There was the breathing over, I forgot, was it 30 seconds, minutes in between? But there were different exercises he taught me that I implemented and they've worked.
Yeah, so the first thing, and I talk about this in the book, Kick Anxiety Sales. This isn't a sales thing. I wrote that book for myself. True story. I wrote it to myself.
Can you get it on audio?
You can get it on audio.
Okay.
It's now on audio. But to me, the first thing I learned for me to be aware of it. Okay, that's the first thing. Is instead of going, oh my God, it's not happening, the more we repress it and try, oh God, not now, all you're doing is throwing fuel on the fire. It's better to say, okay, well, here comes Bob. Bob's here. So I name my anxiety. Here comes Bob. That way it kind of separates me. And that one, it makes you smile a little bit like, all right, Bob's here.
Can I just add, was it, what about Bob? Was
No,
it Bill
had
Murray?
nothing to do with that. Yeah.
Baby steps to the elevator.
I'll have players who will say, I've named it so-and-so. And I'm like, I don't want to know the name. Just know that it's there. I actually have a player on tour who carries a little bobblehead on his, like a little thing, keychain on his bag so that he can look at that when he knows it's there. So it's not him because it's really not you.
Yeah.
Like, let's separate this. This is just your body. It's your alarm system in your house overacting. And that's the analogy I always use is that your window alarm in your house is beeping at 2 o'clock in the morning. What is, if your window went off, your alarm goes off at 2 o'clock in the morning, what are you thinking?
Oh, I'm thinking somebody's trying to break into my house.
Is that what the sensor is saying?
Yeah, possibly.
No, that's not what the sensor's saying. The sensor's saying it's lost connection. Your judgment of it is there's somebody coming to get me.
Okay.
If you live in a war-torn area or high crime area that's had crime around there, you're like, oh, hell yeah, it is. It's still only saying the sensor has lost contact. That's the same thing that happens in our body. So the first thing I want to do is be aware of it without judgment. See, we automatically, because we have to protect ourselves, is that, oh my God, this is going to happen. I'm going to die of a heart attack. Somebody's going to cross the lane on me. People are going to hate me, which is very important to us as humans. All right, so the first one is I want to be aware. Number two is I want to feel anchored in something. I call it the 5 A's. So we're awareness, then anchor. I want to be anchored in something. You call your wife. Okay? There's probably some shame, but if you said, honey, if this happens, I'm going to call you.
Yeah.
You call your ex-wife. Okay? Well, we can also be anchored in our breathing. We could be anchored in scripture. We could be anchored in, for me, mine is usually nausea related. The last one I had, I was on a flight to Maui. We were sitting, by the way, I only fly first class.
I was about to say, you travel a lot.
Okay, but I only fly first class for one reason. It's anxiety related.
Is it just more room?
It's more room.
If you were to throw up, there's only a few more people.
I don't want to see other people puking.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Most people in first class don't puke.
Yeah.
Okay, it's usually in the back. Like Vegas, there's no way in hell I'm flying to Vegas on Southwest Airlines or anybody like that because I don't want to be on the party bus. I want to be in my world. I don't take the first flight out. I don't take the red eye out. I mean, I got rules. My wife knows them. But I want to be anchored in things that I know. And anchored is I can deal with this. So that the third one is how do we manage arousal? Breathing works. The easiest thing is the box breathing that everyone says Navy SEALs do. My Navy SEAL buddy goes, we never got trained that. Anyway, but it's
Awesome.
I know, isn't that great? I love it.
What are you talking about?
Yeah, he's like, we breathe, but I've never learned the secret to. Anyway, but it's to breathe in on a count of 4. And so when we breathe in, the mistake that we make when we're having a panic attack is we become mouth breathers. Well, the problem is we don't expel enough carbon dioxide. I can't remember which one. Excuse me, I'm online now. But we don't expel enough CO2, and that builds up in the brain that causes us to be more panicky. We don't actually ingest enough oxygen, so you don't get a good breath. So the best way to do it is to breathe as if you're laying on the ground. If you pant, if you pass out, the body has a natural reset. People will start breathing normally if they don't hit their head. All right, well, the best way to do it is you breathe in and you push your diaphragm forward. So you don't breathe with your shoulders, you breathe with your gut and you push it out and you hold it for a count of 4. And then when you exhale, you allow your belly button to hit your spine and you blow out a birthday candle.
Very similar to my routine that I have.
It's a very simple one.
Yeah.
Okay. And so the purpose of that is 3 breaths will not make you feel better, but in about 5 minutes you will, because it needs time to run. So we're going to find the anchor that allows us to manage the arousal. For me, when I was on that airplane, what got me was I think I did have a stomach virus going on. And then they came out to give us our food and they put the tray down in front of me. And it was the best looking charcuterie board I've ever seen on an airplane. And I'm like, I can't do it. And then after they put out the food, they brought the card out and blocked the bathroom.
Oh.
And I'm like, oh, crap.
System activated.
Oh, I was on go, man. And I counted down. I watched every episode of The Office I could just to try to distract myself. But I kind of had my hand reaching for the bag. My wife's a nurse, so she doesn't bother her. But I was like, I may have to if I can't get to the bathroom. But that's the arousal and knowing how to control it. It's like I had a plan. I had not an escape route, but I had an embrace route. The fourth one is being able to adapt. So you're parked on the side of the road or you're driving. It's like, what's my adaptation? Well, let me get in the right lane. Okay, if I'm around somebody, let me go in open space. Let me go in a spot where I know I'm okay. And for, Rockstar, you're talking about social, criticism and stuff. It's like a good adaptation is, do people really, really care that much to have a negative impact of me? When you really rationally look at it, it's not true.
Right.
Everybody's got their own crap they're dealing with. Nobody's really paying attention.
Yeah. And those people you really don't care about.
Yeah.
Well, it's like the guy that I refuse to go work out at a gym because people are going to just make fun of me and how not in shape I am. But everybody's in their own world in that gym. Like, they may look at you, go, look at this guy, but that's it. Like,
they're not even that. They're like, hey, I'm going to go to the mirror real quick and pose.
It's just like, you feel like, I don't want to look on the treadmill because I'm running on a 3 and this guy's on a 10. Like, he's just, there's that, like, everybody's going to judge me. Like, look how unfit that guy is.
And we make those attribution errors that they have it all together. And then the last bit is analysis. Is afterwards, how did I handle it? Because we want to learn mastery. So the reason these are different, right? Which awareness without judgment. Hey, this has happened. Bob's here. Anchoring. What do I know I'm going to do? What's my first aid kit that I have in place? Okay. What I can do. One of the things I do is I always keep a drink with me. The reason is I can drink it. It helps me, and it's always carbonated. I always get on an airplane, particularly with bad weather, with a fountain drink because it's carbonated. It helps me. Chewing gum doesn't help, but ice on the palm helps. An old flight attendant told me to chew ice, suck on a lemon. That helps. And flight attendants always have those, by the way, because they don't want to clean it up either. These are things I've learned. The arousal, the best thing to do in between is work to lower your arousal by having 10 to 15 minute sessions. 1% of your day, by the way. It's just to sit in the car. I got here 15 minutes early, sat in the parking lot and just did some breathing. And I actually listened to y'all's show and I was just breathing, just being present with what I feel. The adaptation is big, and that means we're flexible. Just like if you're getting on the treadmill and your hamstrings are tight, you got to learn to get more flexible. So when we're stepping down a step, we can adapt. It's not perfect all the time. The last thing is analysis. Be willing to analyze. You go, today was a good day. It's never all or nothing. It's a continuum. Today was an 82. That's a pretty damn good day.
Can I ask you a personal question?
Yeah, please.
How many times have you actually had to puke?
0.
Do you think, because I had the same thing.
No, I have puked, but not due to anxiety.
Due to anxiety. Mine was in high school, I would never go number 2 anywhere but the house.
Yeah.
Ever.
Not uncommon, by the way.
Ever. Like, I'd have to be checked out of school. Like, if for some reason, and I would never, but then one day, it was like I was like bloodletting almost, where we were stuck on the interstate. And my anxiety was, it always went to my system. And I was like, oh no, because people were getting out of their cars.
You're
like,
GI focused.
Yeah, because there were people just walking around on the interstate. Like, people were bumping, nobody was moving. So I was like, and I told my parents, like, I got to go to the bathroom. They're like, we can't do anything. And so it's just one of those things where it just hit me. It's like, okay. And I went out, walked through the woods. And since that day, I have not had that fear.
Isn't that funny how when you took control?
Yeah. And it's almost like if it happens to you once, it's just like, okay, that wasn't as bad as my head has built it up to be. Although you still have the fear, I totally understand it because I was right there with you.
But that's amazing, though, that you've never puked. Because when I talk to people that have panic attacks, they think they're having a heart attack.
Correct.
How many guys have actually had a heart attack that are experiencing a panic attack?
Not really in that space. It's funny. I had, one year I had 3 cases of food poisoning. Now, just for the record, all 3 damn times were healthy food.
Okay.
Chicken fingers never seem to have food poisoning associated with them.
Very true.
But one of the times I was playing golf, and I got up that morning, had eggs. About the 5th hole, I'm like, God, my stomach, man, something ain't right. And then, you get nervous, and I'm drinking Powerades, and I'm doing everything I can. It's like, maybe I had too much tequila last night. I don't know. And about the 11th hole, I get in the cart, and my buddy goes, man, if you're going to puke, I don't want to watch. I said, I don't have to puke. We didn't get 20 yards to a spot where there was a bottleneck of golf carts, and it came so fast I couldn't do it. And I was like, why does that even bother me? But to me, it's a loss of control.
Yes.
An embarrassment. That's all it is.
I mean, I'm some other guy's story tonight, too.
And we laugh about it all the time now. I mean, we cut up about it because there was the poor guy that went through it. But it got to me a point, it's like, what happened? Who cares if I puke? Who cares? Like, I'm not going to lose control because somebody else, we're not going to have a stand by me moment. Like, I've been in, but I can remember one of my last cases I ever had in training. I was in a hospital ward unit, and I'm doing this test, and they didn't disclose something about a patient that I was doing this assessment was on a medical ward, and she got so anxious she vomited. Man, I was out of that room so fast, and I was like, man, how unprofessional was that? That was unprofessional. I should have sat there and been like, nurse, can we get this cleaned up? It's okay. But man, I was out of there as fast as I possibly could, and that was a big point for me. Is like, I got to grow up. I got to grow up. Like, if somebody were to cross the lane, knock on wood, guess what? You'd probably respond.
Yeah.
You probably would. And if you got to a spot where you felt out of control and not in control of your setting, you're probably more in control than you think. And you're right. Nobody really does give a shit about what you're doing in the gym. In fact, you're there.
Yeah.
But it's funny how we do that, right?
This is the
But those are the 5 A's. Those are the 5 A's.
Mental Health Podcast. Before we get out of episode 2, is there a certain demographic that experiences anxiety more than others?
So, no. Well, okay. Yes and no. I would say that higher demanded people have a lot more demands on them, are going to experience more anxiety. But that's a really gross overgeneralization. All right. There are a lot of people who have anxiety. Anxiety is exploding in this country. I just think it's the constant bombardment. Listen, you watch the news. Everything is bad. Like I had a friend of mine, I said something, they said, hey, we're going to New York. I'm like, well, be careful. And they came back and they're like, dude, it was so cool. So chill. There wasn't any problems. I'm like, oh, according to the news, man, people are crapping all over the subway seats. They're like, hey, here are the pictures. It was fantastic. So is there a bigger demographic? I think people who are breathing are susceptible to anxiety. I think there are certain people who run hot and there's certain people who run cold. I think the people who run cold have this very good ability just to kind of fly. But if you run hot, just know who you are. It probably helps you as much as it does hurt you. It probably helps you focus at work better. It helps you. I mean, the things we got to look at. Mm-hmm.
We're going to link people for information where they can actually read your book. They can pick it up and stuff. The 5 A's, I had never heard of that. I think that's pretty awesome. So we'll put something out where people can actually get a hold of that. Again, if you're experiencing anything right now, very important to reach out, start the conversation. But if you're at a point where you're feeling depressed, sad, feeling worthless, feeling a lot of guilt, suicidal thoughts, 988 is the Suicide and Crisis Lifeline. This is the Men's Mental Health Pod. This is episode number 2, Anxiety, with Dr. Bhrett McCabe, Nick Johnston, Rockstar. I am Lance Taylor. Next episode, can't wait, Mental Health and Sports. We've got a lot of examples coming up from Dr. Bhrett McCabe right here on Disrupt the Media.